The key is actually stopping it. Remembering to stop the recording.
Yeah. That's the interesting part.
Yes, it is. All right.
There we go.
Mr. Raker.
Yeah. Bum.
My husband just got home. I made him some dinner. He's been working on the farm all day. I said, there's your dinner. Go in the
Stay
other
out
room.
of this room.
Because this is a live room. This is not a backdrop.
Yeah. It did catch me off guard this morning. I'm like, wait.
Take the dog with you.
Get out and take the dog with you.
It does look like one of those backdrops, though. I think that's funny.
Well, it's just not the normal view either. Like I
Yeah,
didn't know
that
you
you're
had moved
used to
your
since
work spot.
I did. A little change of scenery.
Cool.
I can see out my back patio.
Ah.
Otherwise, I was looking at my staircase. All right, we're getting some folks as we get closer to 6 o'clock.
Mr. Cubitt.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like he's not still in Michigan.
Are you home, Dick?
Are you in Michigan or Iowa? Iowa. I think he's muted, but I think you said
Nice.
Iowa.
Nice. Cliff, should the PowerPoint be moving, or are we gonna go through the slides?
Oh, it hasn't moved?
No, it has not. Just a FYI.
Stupid thing. Yeah, anytime I do this, like if I minimize this one screen, it like stops doing its thing.
Yep.
So we'll see what it does if it does it now.
I'll let you know.
There we go.
There we go.
There we are. I think when you're in presenter mode, they actually expect you to be paying attention to like what you're presenting instead of putting
Understand.
stamps on postcards.
Keep ourselves busy in any way we can. What I am going to be curious is since I did this a different way, to see if the chat works
Yeah.
or if there's still a hiccup in that. We'll find out.
It's kind of the.
I'm excited. I got my RC Care fixed, my multi-authentication thingy. I'm back back in the system. Yep.
Good.
It only took me 7 months.
Oh, goodness.
But I'm back in the system. We're good to go.
Yeah, the link changed, but I think I went to change it on the slide and it was actually the new link. It was already on the slide. So I think everyone's been using the new link for like dang near forever anyway.
Yeah.
If not, the new one is on the slide.
Ooh, look at that picture.
Yeah. That's actually from Iowa.
Very fall. Beautiful.
That's from Nebraska. I'm just kidding. I don't know where that's from.
We won't fact check.
Corn's corn.
Corn is corn. Look at all those birthdays.
I know.
Woo. That's a lot of birthdays.
Look how
Look
many
at all
people
those
joined.
anniversaries. Holy cats. Sandy Budikoff for 29 years. Look at those Carpenter kids, 11 years. Holy cats.
This is very, yeah, this
Time
is September and October
flies.
because I don't recall we had a
Yep.
meeting in September. Still.
Nope, I don't think we did. Things have been a little crazy.
Well, we do have a bunch of new people in the pipeline, so not a bunch, like
Yeah.
5 or 6 total, I think, so far. So far. So if anybody wants to teach DAT classes, let me know.
All right, we are at 6:01. We've got about 18 people. That's pretty good. Feeling good about that. Since we haven't been together in a while. Jane, I'm pretty sure that's Jane Chapin. She's got her hand up. Do you need a question, Jane, right off the bat? Or are you putting your hand?
Or can she not chat?
By accident.
Okay, I'm going to stop the show. And if you want to scroll through the slides, go ahead. We can't hear you, Jane. Are you muted? So. Hey, it's Rod. It's Mr. Rod Hamer.
Well, I have to say a special thank you to Cliff. He saved my bacon as I was leaving the DR. And so thank you, Cliff. You're an amazing guy. I appreciate it very much.
It's always a pleasure helping you, Rod. Always a pleasure working with you.
Thank you, Rod. I don't know if Jane's having a hard time with her mute, but we'll go ahead and get started. Okay. So first off, I just wanted to say hello. And thank you for joining. It's been a bit. It's been a hot minute since we've gotten together. So I sent out on Saturday the 19th, I believe it was the 19th. I sent out because several folks had requested that I try to get a reoccurring calendar invitation. So it was just on the teams was just on people's calendars for you to accept. And it just was a reoccurring calendar invitation. So that email went out on Saturday the 19th. If you just accept it, it'll be just on your calendar. I will continue because, as we know, everybody doesn't operate like that. I will continue to send out the reminder email with the link. So any those folks that did want this on their calendar and did want it just as a reminder that just pops up every month, and as you schedule your own life around your Red Cross world, you have it there as a reminder. But you will get that out of Volunteer Connection. We have the email distribution list. I'll send it out a day or so before with the link as well. Dick, you got a question? Your hand is up.
I haven't quite made a comment. That list that showed up, unless I'm crazy, yeah, list Mary Flory. Doesn't that need to be changed to her married name?
Hey, that's her. Mary's got to go in and do that. I've told her a million times. She knows how to do it. She just hasn't done it yet. Yes, she
Oh,
is
okay.
Mary Willett. Yes. I talk to her almost every day, Dick.
I believe that.
She'll get to it eventually. So trying to get back into a battle rhythm. There's several things As you all know, we have been, as many of our leaders talk about, in continuous response. And that has knocked us off the rails. But trying to get back on the rails and get back on our battle rhythm with several things, and this is one of them. So putting it on the calendar and just having it reoccurring, I think is going to help keep us consistent. So I do have a few things on our, Cliff and I have put an agenda together, and for tonight, we do have some ideas. And if you have ideas for future meetings, we would like to hear from you. Shoot us an email, shoot us a text message, and say, hey, I think this just popped into my head. I'm seeing Julie Schulte's picture here. She does some things in sustainability. If that's something that, we can bring somebody in and talk about, what are we doing around those initiatives? So that it's not just Cliff and I. If there's a training you want, if there's a particular, like our region town hall had a colonel speak to us about services to armed forces yesterday. And it was phenomenal. Sure, her presentation was amazing, her information, her credentials, just listening to her experience. And I wrote down, bring her to our monthly workforce and have her present. She was dynamic. If not her, our new services to armed forces region lead, her background is amazing. Just bringing a different flavor to our meetings. As Rod and I talk about, we'd like to have a little meat on the bone and have you guys get some things out of these meetings. The first thing though, you guys have been getting the volunteer appreciation event notices from Volunteer Services. These events have really evolved over the years, as some of you and a lot of you have been around for a very long time. Any of you that are kind of new to the organization, Volunteer Services is they took nominations. Individuals will be honored, and we did some watch parties, maybe years past at different sites. This year, the one and only watch party for our Eastern Iowa chapter will be in Cedar Rapids. So we'd like to get as many people in that one space as possible. So when you do that RSVP, you're going to see an option for that face-to-face in Cedar Rapids. And then they do want you to RSVP, even if you're going to, I believe, just watch it from your home base. And that's okay too. We know it's a night event, and we know that they, traveling, dark, driving. Once I get the list of people who are wanting to attend in Cedar Rapids, then we'll be able to figure out, can we carpool? Who can drive with Red Cross vehicles? Where are you located? Where's the closest, Burlington? I know we've got some Red Cross vehicles down there. We've got some Red Cross vehicles in Dubuque. There's one in Iowa City. So you're more than welcome to use those cars to get to this event. Just make sure that you all are aware of that. And Cliff did just let me know that Chris Georges, who is our interim executive director, there's going to be a full spread that's going to be catered, a whole meal that will be served at this. So again, RSVPs are important, but just wanting to let people know that they are going to have a nice dinner at this. In addition to the appreciation event part of the event. Not pizzas. Who's writing this? Yeah, Cliff, or finger food, but an actual real meal, Cliff says. Yes. So it's just an opportunity, one, to get together again face to face and spend time together as a Eastern Iowa workforce in a different setting. We don't really meet in Cedar Rapids very often, so if that's something that you can do, I will be going, and I'm happy to drive one of the Red Cross cars from Dubuque, and anybody else. So we'll start making those arrangements, just so you're all aware. If anybody has any questions about any of that, please feel free to contact Cliff or myself. And we're happy to answer any questions that we can. And if we don't know the answer, we'll get you the answer. The next thing I had was Brandon had sent out that fun email that we do, I believe, every now and again. I don't know if it's quarterly or semi-annually or whatever it is, for our mission cards. If you hold a mission card, and then for the client assistance cards, they're doing the audit right now. And I know some folks are, they're kind of like, how do I get this sent back in if I don't have a scanner and I don't have an office nearby? If you can just take a picture of it and send it in to that and attach it to an email on your phone to that NEIA email that Brandon had in that email. Otherwise, if none of those are the above, just again, send a picture to Cliff and I, and we'll make sure it gets in for you. But that audit is super important, because if they don't have the record of you having your mission card or having your client assistance cards, then they just destroy them. And if you go on a call and that card's not active, it, as you know very well, that just holds up our assistance to the individuals that have been impacted, or it holds up you getting out the door on your deployment, because then we got to find you or get you an active mission card. Again, if you have any hangups, if you're having any issues, send the picture. It's the form. It's not the actual cards. It's the form that came with your cards. Take a picture of it, send that off, and you'll be gold. Now, I say that. Oh yeah, Cliff says, please be sure the form is signed. Please be sure the form is signed. I say that, and several folks have said, I sent it in already. This is the third time or the second time I've sent it in. Please be patient with Irini. She is a beautiful, beautiful human being, trying to keep track, and she has a great system, but it's not to say that there isn't sometimes that one or two, or it can get lost in the shuffle. And so just be real patient with Irini. If for some reason she reaches out to you and says, hey, I need your form, and you say, I sent that, and for some reason she doesn't have record of it, very much apologies are always in order. And I know that's happened. It happens every audit, and I honestly don't know what happens on the back end of that when we know folks have sent them in, and for whatever reason, they're asking you to send it in again. I know it happens. So if you can get those in, I should have looked up the email. I don't know what the end date is that they were. Cliff, I don't know if you know what that date is, or if you can throw it into chat.
I think I think the first date's like this Friday.
Okay.
Is when we want, we have multiple dates there. Ideally,
Yeah.
everybody, like the vast majority of people get it in by this Friday. And then the next date, and then that's where, when I said in the slides, then we kind of start bothering you,
Yeah.
was then we'll start reaching out and sending
We'll get a list is what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, she sends
And-
us a spreadsheet. So if you got it in between the time that she generated the spreadsheet and it gets to us, then we might be calling you and you're like, well, I sent it in. Well, you were just kind of caught in that little void of,
Correct.
her updating her spreadsheet and sending it out, and when you sit it in, that's all.
Yep.
So
Yep. Yeah, we'll get a list, and that's when we start sending text messages or making phone calls. So the next thing I had written down was, as I opened with, we had been speaking that acute to chronic, right, for a few years. The leaders, Brad, our fearless leader, Kaiserman, for the last probably 2 to 3 years, he had been speaking that we're going from acute to chronic we don't have seasons anymore. We don't have fire season. We don't have hurricane season. We don't have tornado season. It's like things just happen all year round. And it seems like, there's never a break. And if you listen to our leaders talk about where we are at right now in the organization, and our spring is a reflection of this, it is just continuous response. We just have continuous disasters happening in not just certain parts of the country now, it's everywhere. We just had wildfires happening in Nebraska, that we were doing some canteening for, and we were on alert for evacuations. So we are here. And so what I wanted to share with you just in deployments, and this is specifically around Hurricane Milton and Hurricane Helene. These are the only two that I've got these statistics for. We've had 74 regional people, volunteers, workforce, including staff and volunteers, so it's just workforce. 74 have deployed since Helene and Milton hit. And 34 of those are from the Eastern Iowa chapter. So that's almost 46%, are from, there are 5 chapters in our region, and 45% of the workforce came from the Eastern Iowa chapter. Some of those are duplicate, but I'm just saying for the supporting of the operations, that is something to be extremely proud of, in this Eastern Iowa chapter. And the workforce, that is work that has been done by the leaders of this area, volunteer leaders, not just Cliff, not just myself, not just the other paid staff. This is a group effort, and I just wanted to talk to that for a second, of the onboarding, the supporting, the continuous support that happens in this area. And it pays off. It pays off in dividends down the line. These are folks that maybe came on a couple of years ago and now are feeling the confidence to be able to continue to deploy because they know they're trained, they feel supported, they have the tools and they have the resources that they need to do the job that they're being asked to do. I just was really honestly very proud of that statistic, because I'm going to do a little recap here. We started with Minden and Elkhorn tornadoes on April 26th. Then the Greenfield tornadoes hit on May 21st. Then the Western Iowa flooding hit on June 23rd. That was just in our region alone. So we had back to back to back. Then Hurricane Beryl, Debbie, and Francine hit. And now we have Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton. the fact that we had that many Eastern Iowa volunteers still willing to step up and say, I'll support, is absolutely amazing after all of that had happened. And I know that many, Minden and Elkhorn, that response was supported by our region with 74% of our regional volunteers. Greenfield, it dipped a bit because so many had supported that first operation, but not by a whole lot. It was still supported by the region. The Western Iowa floods was a level 5, and we had a lot of folks that came from outside our region to support that level 5. Minden and Greenfield were level 4 tornadoes. And again, that's all just by money. But the Western Iowa floods was a level 5. Helene and Milton are level 7s. They're ginormous, and they still need a ton of support. I don't know anybody that didn't go and deploy. People that stayed, and I want to talk about that, supported the work that needed to get done here, because when everybody goes, there is still a lot of work that needs to be done. And the big thing that needed to be done back here was the disaster action team and responding. And I'm looking at the screen and I'm looking at names. And as a duty officer on a lot of the shifts that happened, because we had a lot of staff that went and deployed, I know a lot of you who stayed went on a lot of disaster action team calls. And it was so grateful to be able to have individuals who were willing to go a little bit further, drive a little bit further, because we knew there were not volunteers who were available because they were also deployed, because we had so many volunteers that were deployed. So what I want to kind of propose here is, and I'm going to come back to this question because I want people to think about it. And then I'm going to have you raise your hands and share, because I have one more topic before I do this, because I wanted you to think about it. Is for those who deployed outside the region and went to either Hurricane Helene or Hurricane Milton or Florida or North Carolina or Georgia, I want you to share with us one lesson learned. It can be in a story, or it can just be what was your, because the point of deploying is, other than, and I wrote this down, other than, beyond, we just really like to go help people. We're all humanitarians. I mean, it's part of our your makeup. That's why you came to the Red Cross, and that's why you volunteer. But one of the things about deploying is you want to get a lesson learned to bring back to either the region, to our chapter, to the work that you do. So think about your one lesson learned and how you can bring that back and kind of incorporate it into what you do for the Red Cross here. So think about that, because I'm going to come back to it, and then I'm going to have, if you're comfortable, when the hands get raised, I get a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'll just have the hands raised, and then I'm just going to count and go by the whoever's hand was first and second and third, and just go down the list. And we'll probably wrap up the meeting that way, in hopes that there's several people that are interested and open and willing to share some of their lessons learned. But my last thing that I have written down that I want to talk about is recruitment, because we talked about the gray skies and every, how many people we had, and it wasn't just Eastern Iowa, right? We had 74 folks from our region. And it was pretty evident as we were doing duty officer and the disaster action team program, as we were trying to find volunteers, and having to do a lot of virtual responses, and the importance of recruitment. Now, we do see an uptick sometimes when we have these bigger events, right? And the flooding kind of did it. But it's about getting, and I'm with all due respect, I'm saying this, it's about getting the right kind of volunteers. And we know that the right kind of volunteers come from other volunteers. Our best recruiters are volunteers. And so Cliff and I were talking, and we've talked about this before. We've had Kara Kinder from Volunteer Services come on and share with you guys all the work, where she's doing her volunteer stuff. But I think every now and again we have to just kind of speak to the volunteer in you, the passion in you, and then how do you, and the challenge of how do you go about recruiting that next you? How do you go about, where do you find them, and how do you bring in a buddy? How do you bring in a family member or a friend or a spouse or a relative or a neighbor or a coworker, and make it stick? And make it stick so that we have another individual, a like-minded individual, a high skill set individual, and it's somebody that you've had coffee with them, you've downloaded what the real expectations are, and it's really somebody that is gonna be somebody that has potential to really have a longevity with the organization. Because again, there's nobody better to recruit than somebody who's doing the work. And volunteers volunteer at other places. You're like-minded. You have friends who are like-minded. So we talked about that being kind of a challenge. And maybe throwing that out to folks. And if you need any resources, if you need any help from Cliff or I, if you need information, let us know. But we kind of thought it might be interesting to throw out a challenge to folks to think about. I mean, really get your mind churning about who do you have in your life? Who do you know? And it could take a while to massage this relationship, massage this idea, but that you think might be a really good Red Cross volunteer, and work on that ask, because we are always in need. There is never a time that we are not in need of, especially unless there are two random people with the last name yeah. Kevin recruited his wife.
Yeah.
Hey, spouses are the best, man.
Yeah, I mean, they're already up when you
I
get
just
up going on
said,
dad call. They might as well come with you.
I'm duty officer right now, and I had a call today, less than 3 hours ago, in Dallas, Dallas Center. It's outside Des Moines, I think. And Sue Usher and her husband, like Easy peasy. It is by far the easiest, it's like you and, your spouse want to go? Sure. And off they go. It's really one phone call. It's one less phone call you have to make because they talk amongst each other. But yeah, a spouse is a great option to be able to, and it's a little easier now than it used to be. Getting in through that process with the spouse and keeping active if they're just wanting to be your second, it's a little bit easier. So we kind of want to just kind of recruit a buddy, I guess is what, and I know we've done this kind of before, but just the idea of recruiting a buddy.
Yep.
So that brings me back to this idea of lessons learned. And so if anybody's interested or wants to share their deployment lesson learned, if you want to raise your hand, I'm just going to pick on people as the hands get raised. My friend Sue Tranel.
Well, I have 2 lessons learned. One, don't underestimate the training.
Tell us where you went. Tell us where you
Okay.
went first. Sorry.
I was in North Carolina. I ended up in a shelter at the very, very northwest of North Carolina, about 45 minutes from the Tennessee border.
Okay.
I would say don't underestimate the training of a shelter worker. Like, that is just like critical, because the first 2 weeks, government apps people were doing sheltering. So everybody was doing sheltering because the mission was sheltering and feeding. So, and you could tell the shelter workers that had a decent sense of the training. Like, it's like, oh, you mean I gotta work nights? Uh-huh. Yeah. And then the other one is the hardship codes. Like, people underestimated the hardship codes. And when I got to this
Sure.
shelter, all we had was a generator. We never had hot water. We never drank anything that wasn't bottled. The air conditioning may work, may not when it was on the generator. So I think people like look through the hardships codes and think, nah, they're not doing that. But we really probably did have every hardship code. So that's my little lesson learned.
Yeah. So thank you. And go ahead.
And we always slept on a cot. We slept in the shelters. We slept in the hallways. Slept in a library. We slept in any little spot you could find. It was interesting. It was good.
Yeah, so one of the philosophies that Brandon Holstrom has for our entire region, and Julie Schulte is one of our champions who gets people through this, is once people come in, most of our new volunteers, when they come into disaster, are, and Cliff probably knows this statistic better than I do, is their interest is usually disaster action team. A high percentage come into disaster action team. But Brandon Holstrom, as our regional disaster officer, he requires that everybody is a shelter worker. So once they figure out their primary interest, for your point, Sue, is that everybody's a shelter worker.
Yep.
Everybody's a shelter worker. And when the what is hitting the fan, and that is our mission objective, is to make sure that everybody who doesn't have a safe place to stay has a safe place to stay. And we just need bodies from the headquarters on down. Everybody's a shelter worker.
Yep.
No matter what you were recruited to go there and do.
Right.
You are now a shelter worker.
Yeah, it was true. It was good.
And be prepared to and leaders in the headquarters need to walk the walk and, talk the talk and walk the walk. Because they're the first ones that start ducking around, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
doing shelter work. Oh man, it is hard work. It is the hardest work. Shelter
I
work.
think in talking to the first time deployees, they told me that they really didn't have any idea what the shelter workers did. And I'm like, didn't come from our region.
Right.
I just feel like,
And that's why we make sure people are ready, trained. We won't send people that aren't, and the hardship code that you just spoke to, Sue, also, Sue,
yeah,
making sure that they're fully aware of the hardship codes.
yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Rod Hamer, thank you for sharing, Sue.
Okay.
I'd just like to talk a little bit about the first deployments of people and how valuable they are to our operation. We were in Georgia and we had a person by the name, her name was Tony, and she just was fairly well trained, but then our staff really spent some time training her, and she is just outstanding contribution to our transportation group there in Georgia. And I just think we all have a responsibility, lesson learned. We all have a responsibility to help train the first time people, because their expectations may not be exactly what happened, but we can help them and support them and care for them through the time. And then you'll see an outstanding, this person will be an outstanding volunteer for us in the future.
Such a great point, Rod. I met with our new, we have a new disaster program manager in Lincoln. And one of the first conversations I had was if we get people the tools and resources they need and set them up for success, right? That will take them further. That will take any workforce, paid, volunteer, that will get you further if you can set someone up for success, right? And support them. That means more to folks, and will get them further down the road than you think, especially first time deployers, right? Patience, kindness goes a long way.
In our
Clifford.
group,
Oh, go ahead, Cliff or Rod.
no, in our group, we did have more experienced people just help the inexperienced people really a great deal. So that just took a natural flow.
Yeah, mentoring, training. Clifford.
Oh, I didn't come on there. So one thing I actually learned this when I got back, is if you're gonna deploy and do the client work like shelter resident transition or anything, be sure to have a Red Cross email before you leave. Because if you get issued, like, if you need a computer, your supervisor says, hey, you need a computer to do your work, the technology team is going to issue you a computer, but you have to have a Red Cross email to log into it and do your work. And so they prefer that you're the one logging in. And getting Bill Bennett called me or texted me on Sunday saying he needed a Red Cross password or Red Cross email, and I put in the request, and I think he had it 2 hours later. But his supervisors down there were kind of a little nervous because he was doing SRT. They're like, oh, you don't have a Red Cross email. So if that's something, and it's really simple to get, we put you in, and then keeping it active is really easy too. So that's one thing that I've learned a couple of times is make sure, if you're going to be using a computer, make sure you have that Red Cross email, redcross.org email. And that was my main lesson I learned Sunday. It just makes life go smooth. It's not a big deal if we have to get one for you. It just makes life
Right.
like makes things work more quickly.
Yeah, some of the advantages of that also are keeping your Red Cross life over here and keeping your everyday life over here. So you can just check on your Red Cross emails, direct things to your Red Cross email communications to that redcross.org, and then check it whenever you're leisure, or put out calendar reminder to check your Red Cross email, which is kind of nice. Um, and if you're interested in that, but if you have a role that requires that, we're happy to get you set up with that. But if you are interested in having a redcross.org email, Cliff or myself can get that requested, and it is a fast turnaround. That is not a hard, and then getting it set up is not hard either. So just let us know and we can get that set up for you pretty easily. Mr. George McCory. I was going to try and do it with an
Hello.
Irish accent, but I didn't do that very well, George.
All right. Yeah. So I deployed, pre-deployed for Helene. Went
Right.
to did my first hurricane. So I pre-deployed to Tallahassee. Did community engagement and partnerships, and yeah, went through. Was out in. Which leads me to my point where I was asked to do GovOps. I have the gap. I've never done that before. So it goes back to the old thing about be flexible. So I wrote out Helene in a EOC, Emergency Operations Center in Tallahassee, or near Tallahassee, a little town called Monticello. And it's fine. It wasn't quite near landfall, but still pretty high winds. And getting back to being flexible, I think I wish I would have prepared a little bit more, kind of looking over some of the actions in GovOps, because when I transferred to Greenville, South Carolina, that was a little harder adjusting into GovOps. I'm putting it diplomatically. The first couple days in there, it was not good. I'll be blunt about that. So I wish I would have prepared a little bit more about what the roles and responsibilities are, and also getting a feel for how things are actually working. Because feeding wasn't working immediately. It later got on the ground. So, I mean, there was some negative things about it, but there's also, I had some great teams to work with. Some of you might know Amber Graver. She's
Sure.
DP from Illinois. She was my
Yep.
CEP manager. So good people to work with. And I think the other, again, being flexible is, I think I counted one day I was doing a little bit of everything one day. I think I did 4 or 5 different, I helped take down a shelter. We work in and out of shelters. So again, you become a shelter worker, maybe for a few hours. You help with feeding, there's all kinds of different things that you can do on a deployment. I'd like to Sue to mention that the GovOps people were doing sheltering. I think it gives them a good experience for what's actually happening on the ground. Sometimes when you're working in headquarters, you need to hear what's happening on the ground with the people you're serving and the volunteers that are helping. So that was my experience with Helene.
Well, thank you for sharing. First off, appreciate that. We do use that word, be flexible, We kind of just throw that out there every as an organization. But when you are in the thick of it, it means something, I think, a little bit different. When we start asking you to go here, do this, now do this. And when we have someone who is amicable to those requests and says, yes, I can do that, I can do this, it is appreciated. But to your point, George, and your lesson learned, maybe being a little more prepared in roles and responsibilities, or having, if you're going to take on that, GovOps role, or any role, right? Maybe the lesson learned is maybe ask more questions, or have a little bit more in your back pocket on what am I actually getting myself into.
Right. And yeah, asking questions, that's, when you're tired, you just kind of want to get to the job. But that was another thing, when you're switching, actually, another thing I learned is when you transfer, the clock starts ticking again. So, so when you transfer to another DR, because they open up the Carolinas, the clock starts ticking again, which is fine. But you just also need to kind of pace yourself a little bit too. Didn't really get a day off until it was past about the 9th or 10th day, something like that. So it was a little past time, but and that's another thing, take your day off. It really helps.
Take your day off is what I hear. Yeah. And when you're in the chaos, right? Especially as big and, spread out as these operations were, and everybody's just trying to get their feet under them and stand these up. Pre-deploying, I think, is always a challenge. Would you do that again? Just curious question.
Yes. I think as a shelter worker, that would be good, because I saw a lot of the people that were working in the shelters. It really, the people that were on the ground for the evac shelters, they were top notch. I mean, they were ready. I mean, that's, as a shelter worker, I would do it. I don't know if it's 1% necessary for someone like me doing community engagement, because the operation really hasn't started just yet. Although it's important to be there when it does. And again, that goes back to what I was saying about getting the operation going, because a lot of the processes hadn't really been set up just yet, and it took a while for the wheels to start turning. So I think for certain gaps, but maybe not necessarily for what I was doing in CEP. So
sure, makes sense.
Yeah.
Thanks, George. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Sue.
Sorry, just one more thing to add. Going back to the sheltering, it was really interesting in how we manage the shelter if it's been started by another entity like FEMA or the county, and then they want the Red Cross to manage it. And, the rules they have are not always our rules, like eating food in by their cots. Well, the Red Cross doesn't allow that, but they've already been doing this for a week, so we're not going to come in and say they can't. So it's
Sure.
always, and it was really, I really noticed, and getting back to your earlier meeting where you said we're now the community DPMs, it was amazing at
Mhm.
how much we worked with the community. It was just unbelievable. I mean, they had
That's
county
great.
nurses. Yeah, they had county nurses in there. They had, yeah, you really start to see that all, starting to be like I said, more of a community thing.
Right. So that idea of like a whole community response.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. And when you talk about uh so there's different shelters. There's the independent shelters, there's the partner managed shelters with us supporting, and then there's Red Cross supported shelter or Red Cross managed shelters.
Right,
And that's what you're talking about, was sometimes the rules get a little
right,
if it's a partner shelter and we're just supporting, we have to be very, conscious of the rules that have been set up by the partners. Sometimes are not necessarily the rules the way we would be if we were managing it. And
exactly.
that can get hard on uh, our workforce sometimes. But again, it goes back to that just flexibility and understanding our roles and our responsibilities, right?
Exactly. And that's
Yeah.
where I think it's really,
And good leaders like you who can cascade that down to your teams.
well, and I think that goes back to my point about shelter workers needing to know what's what. They need to know
Right.
how a shelter runs, so it's not quite running amok. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So Brandon just put into chat, he said, thank you to each of you locally and nationally for your unwavering support of the Red Cross mission. Love to hear the stories, recruitment ideas, and reinforcing of training. You are an amazing group of humanitarians. Have a great evening. Thank you, Brandon. Shall do. Shall do. Yeah, so I guess one thing I just wanted to reiterate was um, deploying is one. I think it's just such a great opportunity to reinforce all of the training, all of the work, all of the honoring all of the everything that you bring to the table, right? All those skills, um, and then this opportunity. And I, like I shared, it's we do it, including myself, because it we all want to go and help folks who have been impacted. And a lot of times, I mean, these last few um you know uh incidents, these folks, it's been devastating. The Hurricane Helene and the Carolinas, that's basically a mass casualty event, right? um and but we want to, in addition to that, have you be thinking about what are the things that I'm learning, what are the things that how can I take what I'm learning here and doing. And then if like I think Cliff put example of, if a multifamily fire happened in the Eastern Iowa chapter, and we stood up, we always use our example of the fire in Cedar Rapids, and we need to mobilize a workforce. How can I take that experience of what I've done, and then use that and benefit the Eastern Iowa chapter, or even just the Nebraska Iowa region, and bring that experience and benefit our own area, or more deployments, right? Be able to go out and help on more deployment opportunities, um, and growth. Also, as you go on more deployments, are you looking to grow in your own professional capacity with becoming a supervisor or a manager and getting a packet in of some kind. We're always looking for, individuals that are interested in growing in that area as well. Supervisors especially, that's just a gap area that we need growth in as a whole in this organization. Taking that supervising the workforce training at the institute or something like that, and just have it in your back pocket. So if you do think you want to become a supervisor, you just have it taken. And then the rest is usually just an evaluation and we can get you up into that supervisor role. So it's not hard. But I just wanted to have people start thinking about deployments also as growth opportunities and lessons learned. And there is also a lessons learned at redcross.org if you ever feel like there's organizationally anything that you want to suggest. And they do look at it. They act on it. Don't think that it goes into some void. It is a mailbox that is has weight. If you ever feel like you want to express your lessons learned and share it with the organization, it's lessons learned at redcross.org, and they want to hear from folks. So don't ever hesitate to share if you really feel like something in the organization and you got a good idea or something to share. So other than that, that's all I've got for tonight. If anybody has anything on their mind or want to share anything, we got a couple minutes. Cliff, any last minute things you got?
Nope, I just put that note in the chat about
Yeah.
if you're planning or even thinking about it,
Yep.
please let us know now so we can send you the mission cards.
Yep.
Because it's really, really hard to get them to you like 6 hours before you fly out.
Yeah. Eric's,
And
I got Eric
but that's
Strickler. His are coming. He had requested a couple. I got 2 coming for him.
yeah, and we can we FedEx them to you, so it takes like 2 days.
Yep.
So we get it really, really cheap. We're not spending a ton of money on FedEx, but that's a huge thing that helps us.
Yep.
And then, like I said, with that training, poke around edge, take trainings. You don't have to do the position, but it helps you understand not just kind of like what's going to go on a disaster, because it is very chaotic. Can be very confusing and honestly very frustrating if you don't understand like why is this being done this way. But also like when we have something here and, like, hey, we opened a shelter, but now we have to feed the people. If we know people understand feeding, well, we can feed them without getting them sick. So that's kind of just, you don't have to get the gap. You don't have to say, oh, I want to deploy in feeding or I want to deploy in fulfillment. But if you have that knowledge in your head, then it does make things go smoother when you're out there in the field. Yep, that's all I got.
No. Barney's got a question.
Yeah, I want to thank Cliff for helping me on that token numbers. It really helped, even though later on I had to answer a bunch of questions on my what do you call it? My operations or my thing on the
your my actions.
Yeah, my actions on the RC Care, but it helped out. I just don't understand why we couldn't get back in and put that in once I found that code. I could not understand that.
Yeah, that was a weird one.
The mysteries of computers, I tell you.
Yeah, seriously. Because all the cases before that worked out just fine.
Helping us out.
My pleasure. I enjoy it.
He's the man.
Yeah. Someday you're going to have to tell us what you did in Georgia, whether you stuck your feet up in the air and smoked that big cigar and had that ice cold drink going.
Well, Rod Hamer's on here and he's my boss, so.
Oh,
can't-
okay, later.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Yeah, I worked for him and he's an amazing leader and
Yes, he
and
is.
so knowledgeable. So yeah, I managed cars and trucks, well, trucks and accidents and herbs and MERVs and the kittens and puppies. So which I love doing. So that's what I did there.
He killed it. He killed it.
So
All right, friends. 7 on the dot. Appreciate your time. Everybody enjoy the rest of your night.
yep,
Thanks,
and reach
Jody.
out
Have
to
a
us
good one.
anytime.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Claire.
Fires, no fires, no fires.
Yeah. See y'all.